How did each state vote relative to the rest of the country in 1992? That's what we're going to find out today. We've got the 92 presidential election between Clinton and Bush. We'll get the national popular vote margin. Then we'll look at the margin in each state and we'll find out if they voted to the left or the right. So no spreadsheet in this video, it's just going to be the map. But first, we've got to get the background information. So in 1992, Bill Clinton defeated incumbent George H.W. Bush. He got 370 electoral votes. He won 32 states plus D.C., and his share of the national popular vote was a plurality. It was 43%. Bush, the Republican, finished with 168 electoral votes out of 18 states, and that was worth 37.5%. But this election was technically a three-way race. Ross Perot, the independent candidate, he didn't win any states or get any electoral votes, but he was a major factor in many of the margins across the country. Nationally, he finished with 18.9% of the vote. Some people think that if Perot was not in the race, Bush might have defeated Clinton. We're never really going to know, but remember to factor in Perot on some of these margins. So the baseline for the map today is the difference between Clinton's 43% and Bush's 37.5%. That's a 5.5% advantage for Clinton. So any state that voted for Clinton by more than that is going to be relatively bluer. Anything that voted for Clinton by less than that or for Bush is relatively redder. So let's head back onto the map. We'll go through these states alphabetically. Let's break down the first state of Alabama. Bill Clinton got 40.9%. George Bush won the state with 47.7%. The margin for Bush there is 6.8%. That's in the opposite direction of the national popular vote of 5.5%. So that's 5.5% away from Clinton, another 6.8% toward Bush. You combine those, and Alabama was relatively redder by 12.3%. So now we could speed through the rest of these states. Alaska was even redder than that at 14.7%. Arizona, same direction at 7.5%. Arkansas, Bill Clinton's home state, he won it comfortably, and the state was relatively bluer by 12.2%. In California, they were bluer by 7.9%. Colorado was redder by 1.3%. Connecticut was just a hair bluer at 0.9%. Delaware a little bluer at 2.7%. Florida moderately redder at 7.4%. Georgia a little bit milder at 4.9%. Hawaii came in bluer at 5.9%. Idaho significantly redder at 19.1%. Illinois moderately bluer at 8.8%. Indiana way redder at 11.6%. Iowa had the smallest relative percentage out of all the states. It went for Clinton by 6%, and that was just a half a point bluer than the rest of the country. Kansas double digits redder at 10.7%. Kentucky a little redder at 2.2%. Louisiana very mildly redder at 0.9%. Maine at large was bluer by 2.9%, and this state actually gave Ross Perot more support than George H.W. Bush. In the first district, it was bluer by 2.6%. The second was 3.3%. Maryland came in bluer at 8.7%. Massachusetts, that was the biggest relative blue percentage out of all the states. It comes in at an even 13%. Michigan, a small relative percentage of 1.9%. Minnesota, about 3 times that at 6.1%. Mississippi, way redder at 14.4%. Missouri, bluer at 4.7%. Montana, back toward the right at 3%. Nebraska was heavily redder at 22.7%. The first district was 16.1%, the second 20.6%, and the third 31.7%. Then it was redder in Nevada at 2.8%, New Hampshire 4.3%, and New Jersey 3.1%. New Mexico was also 3.1%, but that was toward Clinton. New York was noticeably bluer at 10.3%, but North Carolina was redder at 6.2%. North Dakota, way more than that at 17.5%. Ohio, way less than that at 3.7%. Oklahoma, much more than that at 14.2%. Then it was bluer in Oregon at 4.5%. Pennsylvania, 3.6%. And Rhode Island, 12.5%. South Carolina was even more than that toward the Republicans at 13.7%. South Dakota was also redder by 9.1%. Tennessee, just a tiny bit redder at 0.8%. Texas, the home state of both Bush and Perot, that one was redder at 9%. In Utah, this state had the highest relative red percentage out of all the states, and it's the only one that gave Perot a higher percent than Clinton. The final number here between Clinton and Bush comes out to 24.2%. Vermont was was bluer by 10.2, Virginia redder at 9.9, while Washington was bluer at 5.9. West Virginia, back then, that was kind of a blue state, and it was bluer by 7.5. Wisconsin, a little bit redder at 1.2. Wyoming, 11.1 toward the GOP. And finally, Washington, D.C., a massive 70% relatively bluer than the rest of the country. So that's it. We've got the entire map filled out. This is the 1992 electoral map. And at the top, you can see states that were more Democratic, total 263 electoral votes. For the Republicans, it was 275. So very, very close in that regard, but Republicans with a tiny edge. Now, some of this map is similar to what we would expect to see today. You've got the bluer West Coast and the bluer Northeast, plus Minnesota, Illinois, and New Mexico. Then much of the upper Great Plains and the Southeast is redder. But here, New Jersey voted to the right of the country. West Virginia was to the left. The premier bellwether state back then of Missouri, that was also to the left. Clinton's home state of Arkansas, he got a big bounce there, and that was way bluer. But you've also got New Hampshire, that was to the right. And of the three Rust Belt states, only Wisconsin was to the right. A bunch of other states pretty much voted in line with the entire country. That was Louisiana, Tennessee, Connecticut, but especially in Iowa. They only voted a half a point bluer, so they were the most closely aligned bellwether of that year. Plus, it's fascinating in Maine at large. You've got Perot getting more votes than George H.W. Bush. And in Utah, you've got him getting more than Bill Clinton. There's usually one or two crazy stats to point out in each election. And this was a while ago, but it's not so far in the past that nobody remembers this at all. A lot has happened since then, and who knows how much of a factor Perot was in some of these states. I think a lot of Clinton supporters would probably say that if Perot was not on the ballot, he still would have won, while Bush supporters would have said that Bush would have pulled it out if it wasn't for Perot. So it was just a plurality for Clinton, but he does get to brag that he took down an incumbent president. And that ended 12 consecutive years of Republicans controlling the presidency. And in 1992, this was the colorful looking map for how each state voted relative to the entire country. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about the shading here compared to the national popular vote? Which 3 or 4 states jump out to you the most? Maybe it's Colorado. That state is light red. Maybe it's Delaware. That state is light blue. Plenty you could point out on here, so let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.